It might have been against the lowly Jazz, but in today's Locked On Pelicans, I'll tell you why Zion Williamson having a big game was either the best or worst thing that could have happened. It's Monday's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, here with you on this Monday, tipping off a week's worth of shows. I apologize for this episode being a little bit late coming out. Had some internet issues, but we got it here now. And we are going to talk about Zion Williamson, breaking down his big game against the Utah Jazz and why that's either a good or a bad thing, depending on where you stand when it comes to him. We'll look at the offensive struggles in the second quarter of that game, Jose Alvarado's impact off the bench, and I want to use the Jazz as an analogy for something as well with New Orleans. So we got a lot to cover in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Now is the perfect time to join. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, no need to win to get the bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And become an everyday. That means you listen Monday through Friday. Let me know if you are in the comments down below. So let's get into this one. The Pelicans winning over the Utah Jazz 136-123 was a blowout in the first quarter, kind of half, but then it got close. Then it stopped being close. Overall, look, wins are fun for New Orleans right now, and they got a decent one, I'll call it, against the Utah Jazz. But the story of the game to me was this. Zion Williamson, while not the leading scorer for the team, that was CJ McCollum with 26 points, looked awesome. 24 points, 14 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 blocks, just 2 turnovers. He had some foul trouble early on in the game. He was 11 for 21 from the field in this one, 2 of 5 from the free throw line. He just looked awesome. And it was obviously the reason the Pelicans won this game. That's either a good or bad thing, depending on how you view him right now. And I tweeted it out during the game or after the game, and I said, performances like this are why don't just give up on Zion Williamson, and you probably kind of keep on this train a little bit longer here. When he plays, he is so impactful on this team that you can just really see it on the court. This team has looked different just since he's come back from injury, even in the games that he hasn't played. And I think that's worth noting. I basically did every TV station this past weekend in New Orleans, and I was on WWL, WWL, Fox 8, and WDSU. And we were talking about this, and it's like, why does this team look different? And it's simply the Zion effect. Nothing's different. Trey's been playing at a high level for a while. CJ's been good. DeJounte Murray started playing better once Zion came back. But it's not like they welcomed a ton of health back. It was they added Zion back, and they looked like a different team. And all of a sudden, this is a franchise that went from basically winning one game in December to feeling like they can win on any given night. That's a complete 180 from this whole situation. It's the Zion effect. Just having him back around the team makes them think, oh yeah, we can win. Now, losing can be contagious. It can be a little bit like a disease. But when you feel like you can win, just feel like you can win, that adds a different element back to this franchise. Now, I don't think they're not going to be a playoff team. They're not going 30-9 the rest of the way, which is what it would take just to get to 500. They're missing the playoffs. But you start to see a glimpse of what this team could have been. And Zion with a really dominant performance like this, and they needed that type of performance. And we'll talk about the rebounding a little bit more in the next segment when the offense fell apart for New Orleans, because that actually ties into it. You look at this and you go, are we going to find someone else like this in the draft? If you're out on Zion Williamson, and that's a totally valid thing to feel, I believe that. If you're like, I want to do this anymore, I get it. Are you necessarily going to find someone like this? Look at a team like the Utah Jazz. They tanked last year. They tanked the year before that. They're very much actively tanking this year. Look at who didn't play in this game, despite them probably being pretty healthy here. No Jordan Clarkson, no Walker Kessler, no Lowry Markkanen, no John Collins. Collins is actually hurt. No Taylor Hendricks. Some of their best players aren't playing because they just want to actively lose games right now. And they'll probably do it again next year unless they get Cooper Flagg or a top 2 pick. They're going to be bad for a while, it feels like. And they're kind of wasting Lowry Markkanen, in my opinion, when it comes to that, though he seems okay with all of this. This is why being like, we're going to pivot, we're going to tank can be kind of scary. There's no guarantee that you're going to get out of that anytime soon. And you might just be stuck in that for a while, and you've got to keep tanking until you find that blue chip prospect to build around. For better or worse, depending on how you view it, Zion Williamson is that kind of guy. You took him number 1 overall. He was the most hyped prospect coming into the draft since Anthony Davis, and Anthony Davis was the most hyped draft pick coming into the draft since LeBron James. You don't just give up on those guys, in my opinion. If you want to, it's fine. Because, look, I get it. If you're not playing, the immaturity things are still abound with him. When I was talking to some people around the league, around the suspension, and all that, look, people are late pretty regularly to things. Not like maybe as much as Zion, but to publicly do that is a pretty significant step where things must have been bad enough for the team to do that. Felt they needed to do that. Actively hurt his trade value with that, right? So when you get a guy, though, that can perform at this level, you got to probably keep building around him. This is why they're looking to move on from Ingram. And conceivably, what it sounds, my understanding is, and what all of our understanding is, they're still going to build around Zion Williamson because look at what he does to the franchise. And then he has nights like this where it's a really well-rounded performance, where the defense looks good, where he impacts the game in such a positive way. And you're like, oh yeah, we can't give up on him. Now, it shows that that's a great thing that he can do this. And it's against the Utah Jazz, sure, but look, you got to do it on a daily basis anyway. He did in this game. So if you're capable of doing that, we keep building around you. Now, you might be like, I want to give up on Zion, and you want him to have bad games then, and I get it. Because when he does this to the front office, they're going to keep building around him. These are the type of performances that, in their opinion, are going to justify building around Zion Williamson. Ownership might look at this and go, oh yeah, we can't just give up on this guy. Look at what he's capable of doing. And that's why it's thus the best or worst thing, depending on how you view it. If he has bad games, it's going to be easier to move on from him. If he comes back and he just loafs around, doesn't impact the game, doesn't help you win, then you're like, yeah, we're going to move on and it's fine. But that's not what he's been doing. So it's either the best or worst, depending on how you feel about it. I will say this, if you think this is the worst thing that could have happened and you want to move on from Zion, you also do want these type of performances. You want his trade value to be as high as possible. And that, I think, is something that's worth keeping in mind, too. I don't think his value is, like, bottomed out around the league, but I don't think it's super high. There are teams that would definitely take a chance on him, but I don't think you'd get what you'd want in return. The better he plays, the more teams will take that risk. And there you go. Better return on the trade. And that's maybe how you move on from Zion Williamson. So coming up next, let's get into that second quarter where things really struggled. That actually has to do with Zion Williamson as well. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Prize Picks. Basketball season is heating up even though things are real cold in New Orleans right now. And there's no better way to get real money action while watching your favorite NBA stars than with Prize Picks. Whether you're a diehard fan or just love some friendly competition, Prize Picks makes it fun and easy to turn your basketball knowledge into cash. So here's how it works. You pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Do you think CJ McCollum is going to drop more than 24 points? If Zion plays, are his rebounds going to be more than 8? PrizePicks lets you make your projections and put your money where your mouth is in just 30 seconds. It's really fun to do, and it's just a way to use your basketball knowledge and get real money sports action. And once you win, you can get your money as quick as 15 minutes. It's honestly the best way to keep the game exciting. So now's the perfect time to join. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. There's no need to win to get the bonus. That's right. No need to win to get the bonus. Just download the app. Use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans. By the way, if you hear a little bit of noise in the background or something, I'm running the heat in the office here because it is cold in New Orleans. So I apologize for that, but I don't want to freeze to death while doing this show here. So let's keep talking about the Pelicans win over the Utah Jazz, 136-123. They're on a winning streak right now, which is kind of wild to think about. But I want to get into the second quarter. This team was up 26 points in this game. They had doubled the Utah Jazz. They were up 52-26, and it looked like this was a game that you could just leave at halftime. It was just going that way. And then the second quarter happened, and New Orleans kind of fell apart. They lost that quarter 19-30. And all of a sudden, I think they were up just 9 at halftime. And you kind of look at this and are like, what the heck? The offense fell off a cliff. In that second quarter, you saw some of the concerns that I've had about this team for a while. The shooting, particularly from three, wasn't there. They were 1 of 8 from three during that period, 7 for 21, 4 of 9 from the free throw line too, which is a pretty bad number. They also, during that stretch, had 6 turnovers compared to just 3 assists. It was just everything you worry about New Orleans kind of happening all at once. Part of this, I do believe, was that Zion Williamson was in foul trouble and had to sit for a little while and not play as much as you would have liked. He only got 6.5 minutes in the second quarter when, he should probably play more than that. Trey Murphy, by the way, played all 12 by comparison. So Zion's out, and the offense fell completely apart. And it's not a huge surprise. He just makes everything click, and everyone just a little bit better in this game. But it's worth noting because of the rebounds here. And this is why Zion Williamson is so important to the team. And something that we talked about earlier on in the year, even when he was injured, and you're seeing it still come up. It's not a well-designed offense. It hasn't been a well-designed offense for a while. This is why a lot of people have issues with Willie Green, want to make some sort of coaching change or something like that. They just don't play a cohesive offense at all, in my opinion. Zion masks and fixes a lot of that. It's technically results over process at that point, which we don't like, but sometimes you just got to win the game. Zion in this game had 14 rebounds, 8 of them being offensive, and frankly, New Orleans killed it on the offensive glass. 5 for Daniel Tice, 4 for Jeremiah Robinson Earl. They had 21 offensive boards overall in this game. That gave them, in this game, a pretty ridiculous number of second chance points. They outscored Utah in terms of second chance points 35-8. 35-8 is a pretty ridiculously good number, obviously. 35 is insane. New Orleans needs that because the offense can go a little bit cold if the shooting just goes a little bit streaky, because the offense isn't well designed and you're just taking a lot of bad mid-range jumpers, which you're going to miss more than you make. You need to be able to get those offensive boards. You need to then just be able to put them right back in. And Zion Williamson is elite at doing that. He has been his whole career. His second jump, he goes up, puts the ball up, misses, he lands, he can then jump right back up and get the ball. The timing on his second leap is just absolutely otherworldly. And it masks a lot of issues with the offense. But look, as long as Willie Green's the head coach, and even if Willie Green wasn't the head coach, you don't know if it's, coaching or the players. I think a lot of it's the players too, as some of them just aren't that good. You need someone like Zion Williamson to clean up those mistakes, to put him back up, and to just get some easy points that way. In New Orleans gets that with him. And when he was limited in the second quarter, you see the offensive struggles really start to come up. Overall, New Orleans had a pretty good game in this one. They shot well from 3, 22 of 50. Think about that for a second. CJ was 6 of 12, finished with 36 points. Murray was 2 of 6. I'll take that. He had, where was his number? 8 points on the night. Hawkins off the bench, 3 of 9. I'll take that even, 11. Jose Alvarado, we'll get to him in a minute. He was awesome, particularly to close out the game in the fourth quarter. Trey was a little bit off, 2 of 6. Tice, by the way, went 2 of 2 from 3. And in that second period, Daniel Tice was the only guy that made a 3, which is kind of ridiculous to think about here. So the offense still has issues, but Zion's going to help you kind of fix that with the offensive rebounding. And this is something that we talked about earlier on in the year, where you need to kind of attack the offensive glass when you didn't have Zion, when you didn't have Ingram, to help you with some of those second chance points opportunities, because you just need it. Because the offense still kind of stinks. Hence, blowing a 26-point lead. They didn't blow it, right? Like, the Jazz didn't take the lead here. So, while they didn't blow it, to go from 26 points to 9 points at halftime is not something that I was particularly thrilled about with this team. So overall, you need those second chance points. You need those offensive rebounding opportunities, and you need to kind of play like New Orleans did minus the second quarter. They were much better in the second half, got things under control, kind of just ran away from the Utah Jazz there. It was 4 points in the second half that they led by. So overall, it's still a pretty good performance, but it was really Jose Alvarado, and we'll talk more about him in the next segment, down the stretch that just really made an impact. He was freaking phenomenal in the second half of this game, particularly in the fourth quarter where he just took over in a way that you rarely see someone like of his level do. But it just speaks to the deeper issues that we've seen from this team. And so while Zion Williamson might be back and the team is playing significantly better than they have before, right? They've won 3 in a row. They're 6-4 in their last 10 games. Think about that for a minute. You still have a lot to clean up here. And while I'm a big believer of just build around Zion Williamson. I've said this. If I were running the team, just knowing how hard it can be to find those guys and how long you could be stuck in the dark trying to rebuild, I'll go down with the Zion chip and I'll get fired trying to build it around Zion Williamson. He masks a lot of issues. But don't forget that those issues exist. And that second quarter was a really good reminder of it, that when they are doing some sort of postmortem on this season, this is a game that I would point to and be like, no, don't give me all of your second half of the season results and be like, look at how much better we were, because there's still some deep issues with the team that need to be addressed, that need to be fixed. Although the three-point shooting is turning around now that Zion Williamson is back. They went from being one of the worst three-point shooting teams to kind of getting towards middle of the pack, which, with the way the stats work and everything, is an overall pretty decent way to be trending with it all. So he makes a difference here, but those issues still very much persist. Whether it's coaching, whether it's players, they definitely need to do a bunch of things to try and fix all of that. And we'll see what they do when it comes to that this offseason, because once again, it's going to be one of the most pivotal off seasons in franchise history, as it is basically every year. When you're constantly in win now, which is what this team is, you're constantly in the most pivotal season that you're ever going to have. So that is something that is worth keeping in mind here. That second quarter, not great against a pretty bad, actively tanking team that the NBA probably needs to step in and do something about, but whatever. Not the team that I cover. But interesting to kind of look at. Zion hides a lot of things, but those issues still persist. So coming up next, let's talk about Jose Alvarado, his impact on everything. And then I'm going to hint at something we're going to talk about later in the week that's going to be important. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. The Saints aren't in there, so if you want to make these even more exciting than they already are, and they've been pretty exciting, FanDuel is the way to do it, because right now, you're going to probably get the best offer they've ever had on Locked On. New customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. Pelicans are -8 over the Utah Jazz. Jazz are actively trying to lose. I think there's going to be another blowout here in the Smoothie King Center. I like that -8. Put $5 down. If you win, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets, in addition to winning your bet. I love that the FanDuel app is super easy to navigate. They have a variety of bets that keeps every single game interesting. And when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. So whether you're betting on the Pelicans and your favorite teams, or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com, $300 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well, and become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans. If you are, let me know in the comments down below. Let me know how you're feeling about Zion Williamson and this team. And don't forget about the free daily newsletter from Locked On Pelicans. It'll be in your inbox a little bit later today. You can sign up over at LockedOnDaily.com. And for your second listen, it's Locked On Saints. In-person head coaching interviews are starting for the New Orleans Saints. Ross Jackson is keeping you apprised of everything going on with the black and gold over at the Locked On Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make them your second listen today. I saw him a bunch over the weekend, which was really cool. So let's keep talking about the Pelicans winning over the Utah Jazz 136-123. Jose Alvarado here, making another massive impact. He was absolutely phenomenal to close this game out. He finished with 19 points on the night, 16 of them in the fourth quarter. You want a closer, a guy that takes you home here? It was Jose Alvarado in this game. 16 points in the fourth quarter, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 block, 1 turnover. He was 5 of 7 from 3. That is 71.4%. Dude was just frankly incredible out there. I've said this. I promised this last season. I'm done doubting Jose Alvarado. He's obviously, it's game-worn jersey, one of my favorite players on this team, him and Herb Jones. And these guys are just so much fun, in my opinion. So much fun. These just energy dudes who hustle and just give it their all. You know, Jose isn't 6 feet, in my opinion. He's just not. And look at the impact that he makes. And every time you look at him, like he was too undersized, it won't work. He then has games like this. And again, you can point it to being the Jazz and they're bad, they're tanking. All that is true. That doesn't mean every player does it, right? Not every player is having this kind of impact against this team. And there's still NBA players out there who are playing with pride and want to win. Those young guys on the Jazz are trying to prove themselves. So for Jose to come in like he did is just, yeah, this dude is awesome. In my opinion, they will eventually trade him. He'll be included in some sort of deal in the future, whether it's this year or next year. I doubt it'll be this year, just kind of given how things are going with this team, that there's no reason to get rid of him. They'll just do, likely going to just do a small deal that ducks the tax. But if they want to make a bigger roster shakeup in the future, given the way that their salaries are and the way Jose's extension will kick in, it's probably going to be a tradable deal. He's making $2 million this year, under $2 million this year. Next year, his extension kicks in. It's $4.5 million next year. And then the year after that, 2026, 2027, it's $4.5 million player option. That $4.5 million is very tradable as like sweetener or something like that in a bigger deal in the future. I hope they don't do that. I would be willing to give Jose Alvarado and Herb Jones, truthfully, like a lifetime contract right now here in New Orleans. Like, just let them be here for life. They like it here. Let's not change anything. I don't know if that'll be the case, but I said a year ago, I ain't doubting Jose Alvarado anymore. And you see why in this game. Just unbelievable. I talked to a couple of media people. Will Guillory and I have been talking about this. When we saw DeJounte Murray struggling throughout this season and not playing particularly well, is there ever going to be a point where you close with Jose Alvarado over Murray, and what does that do to this team? And you kind of saw it in the fourth quarter here where Murray didn't get any minutes, that you have Jose Alvarado playing at such a high level. What does it do? And you close with him, and you saw it, which is a pretty cool thing to see, and just shows you the impact of a guy like that who you can have on this roster. That's like an impressive decision from Willie Green to go with the guy who's hot to win the game, which, look, we'll talk about this more in the future too, of they're going to be at odds here, right? The Pelicans are going to need to lose games. Willie Green wants to win games, and it puts you in an uncomfortable situation where there is organizational misalignment, let's call it. And that's going to impact this team this season here when it comes to that sort of stuff. So we'll look at that later. And I want to get into some stuff with Brandon Ingram later in the week too, because I don't know if we're going to see him play in a Pelicans uniform ever again, even if he's not traded. I'll explain what I mean in a future show. But Jose having an impact like that, just a winning player that I want to keep seeing here in New Orleans for a very, very long time. Ideally, he was just phenomenal in this game. Really love seeing what he's doing. By the way, a couple other guys who've been playing particularly well, I think, overall. Daniel Tice has done a pretty good job recently. I'd rather see Carlo Makovic get minutes over Daniel Tice. I'm still believing in the future. Carlo did get some run in this one, played 4 minutes in the first half. You never see something like that, so it kind of blew me away that we were seeing him check in. But Tice, to his credit, has been playing particularly well. 18 points, 8 rebounds in this game. He's making some threes, too. He's back in the rotation for sure behind Misi, who's out with an illness, who is not playing tonight against the Utah Jazz. By the way, Zion's also questionable for this game. You also are seeing Hawkins get more run, which I think is a good thing. He's still not shooting particularly well, but hopefully that'll come around too. Javonte Green has had an outsized impact on a bunch of these wins, I feel, as well. He's looked particularly good with the way that he plays. I think he's going to generate some trade interest around the league. If they need to just kind of dump a contract, you could do it with Javonte Green, which could be a smart move. That gets you under the luxury tax and maybe gets you an asset back in return rather than trading away an asset, which I think would be a good thing to do for this team. Giving up a second round pick just to get under the luxury tax is the type of move that I get it. They'll do it. They got to do it too, but it's going to also annoy me because they put themselves in this situation. But if Javonte Green isn't part of your future and you can get something back from him and duck the luxury tax, that's like a win all around for New Orleans. He's been playing particularly well, even if the stats don't show up in the box score with that. So you're seeing this team get into form. You're seeing a glimpse of what we thought they could be this season when a lot of people were like, yeah, they're top 6 in the West with the amount of talent that they have. Injuries derailed that. Coaching has a factor into it as well. But overall, you kind of see the vision a little bit, which probably means they're going to bring it back next season, minus Brandon Ingram. We'll talk about that more in probably on the Wednesday episode. We'll recap this game tonight. In Tuesdays, probably get into some trade talk on Wednesday when it comes to that. Thursday, we'll be talking about the Bucks game. We got a lot to talk about here on Locked On Pelicans, so please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. I'll be back with y'all tomorrow. Stay warm, enjoy the game, and I'll see y'all next time.